Let's talk about Caitlin Clark and the idea of a government probe or an investigation into hostile work environments being conducted by the government because of the actions that the league itself and some of the players have had towards Caitlin Clark.
The WNBA is no stranger to controversy, but what's unfolding now could shake the league to its core. The Department of Justice, members of Congress, and even political heavyweights are turning their eyes toward one central issue: whether Caitlin Clark's civil rights have been violated.
Pretty much since Caitlin Clark got assaulted in the very first damn game. We just seen countless attacks on Caitlin Clark, and I'm not even finna go through the jacket of playing the videos. We all know what happened at CC. Now, what is crazy about all of this is that the Wall Street Journal, wrote an article earlier this week kind of explaining Caitlin Clark's civil rights being broken.
For months, fans have watched her take hit after hit on the court with little to no protection from referees or league officials. What started as heated debates among fans has now escalated into a potential federal investigation, and the league's leadership is scrambling. Commissioner Kathy Engelbert, once seen as a steady hand guiding the WNBA's growth, now finds herself at the center of a storm that could define her legacy. The question is no longer just about basketball. It's about leadership, accountability, and whether the league can survive the political and legal firestorm now heading its way.
ESPN sports anchor himself, Stephen A. Smith, has spoken about the WNBA should be under investigation.
It didn't take a single incident to set this chain reaction in motion. It took a pattern. Over the past season, Caitlin Clark has endured a series of brutal, high-profile hits that have gone far beyond normal physical play. The first spark came with Kennedy Carter's now infamous blindside hit delivered when the ball wasn't even in play. It was the kind of shot that made fans cease on live television and immediately wonder why there was an ejection. But that was only the beginning. Next came Diamond to Shields, charging at Clark with the force of an NFL linebacker. The contact wasn't just hard, it looked calculated. Then Marina McBrath stepped into the spotlight, delivering a shove that more closely resembled an off-court altercation than a defensive maneuver. Finally, there was Tina Charles' sneak punch to Clark's back, a move that might have been missed by casual viewers, but was caught on replay and shared widely online. Individually, these incidents could have been dismissed as isolated moments of bad judgment. Together, they painted a troubling picture: a star player being deliberately targeted and a league unwilling to intervene.
This thing is going to grow legs because a lot of people is going to speak out about this. And I'm telling y'all right now, people from behind the scenes sources have told me as a recent, now I wasn't going to say nothing, that Caitlin Clark agent could possibly allegedly be behind this happening.
None of these plays were in the heat of a scoring attempt. None were necessary defensive stops. They were off-ball and, most importantly, left unpunished. The absence of consequences was what shocked fans most. No ejections, no suspensions, not even token fines. The silence from officials in the league office seemed to say one thing: this is acceptable. That perception only fueled public outrage. Clips of each hit began circulating on social media, often stitched together to show a relentless pattern of aggression. The narrative grew louder. Caitlin Clark wasn't just being played tough. She was being hunted. Fans who had flocked to the WNBA because of Clark's arrival felt betrayed. Many had spent hundreds of dollars to see her play in person, only to watch her get knocked to the floor repeatedly with no whistle. Parents brought children to games, eager to see a player who had inspired them, only to leave shaking their heads at what felt more like a street fight than professional basketball. By the time national outlets like the Wall Street Journal covered the story, the framing had shifted. This wasn't just about hard fouls. It was about the league's duty of care and whether ignoring these hits could cross into legal territory. When the phrase civil rights violation entered the conversation, it marked a turning point. These moments on the court replayed, analyzed, and debated endlessly became the foundation for a much bigger storm. They weren't just fouls anymore. They were evidence. And as that evidence piled up, so did the calls for someone, anyone, to step in and stop it. The next question was inevitable. If the hits kept coming and the league kept looking away, Who else might take notice? As it turns out, the answer would come from far outside the world of basketball. If the end court hits lit the fuse, the WNBA's leadership, or lack thereof, poured gasoline on the fire. At the center of this crisis is Commissioner Kathy Engelbert, the person tasked with guiding the league through growth, controversy, and everything in between. But in the eyes of many fans, Engelbert hasn't just failed to lead. She's disappeared entirely. From the moment Kennedy Carter's blindside hit on Caitlin Clark went viral, there was an opportunity to set the tone, a swift suspension, a fine. Even a strong public statement condemning the play could have sent a message that targeting star players wouldn't be tolerated. Instead, there was nothing. No penalties, no press conference, no reassurance to fans or sponsors that the league was in control. Weeks went by and more incidents piled up. Diamond to Shields linebacker-style blow. Marina Maber shove. Tina Charles sneak punch. Each moment was another test of Engelbert's leadership, and each time she chose silence. Her absence became so glaring that media personalities began calling out directly, accusing her of hoping the controversy would simply fade away. Inside league circles, the strategy, if you could call it that, seemed to be to wait it out. That approach might work for minor PR hiccups, but not when national headlines and federal interests are in play. In the modern sports landscape, silence isn't neutral. It's interpreted as complicity. By refusing to address the issue publicly, Engelbert left a vacuum for others to fill. And fill it they did. Journalists began framing the situation as a civil rights matter. Politicians started asking questions. High-profile commentators from ESPN analysts to sports radio hosts turned Clark's treatment into a daily talking point. And the longer the commissioner stayed quiet, the more she looked either unwilling or unable to protect the league's biggest draw. This wasn't just about public perception. The WNBA is in the middle of a growth phase with increased TV deals, sponsorships, and attendance figures largely driven by Caitlin Clark's presence. Protecting her wasn't just a matter of fairness. It was good business. Yet, the commissioner's unwillingness to act gave the impression that players' safety was negotiable even for the face of the league. Sponsors noticed, fans noticed, players noticed, and perhaps most importantly, lawmakers noticed. Engelbert's silence didn't just hurt her credibility. It signaled to outside observers that the WNBA might not be capable of policing itself in a league trying to prove it belongs in the same conversation as the NBA in terms of professionalism. That's a dangerous perception. What could have been a contained controversy spiraled into a national issue, not because of the fouls themselves, but because the person with the power to stop them refused to engage. The leadership vacuum at the top turned an internal problem into a public crisis. And when leadership fails, someone else inevitably steps in. In this case, the next move came from Washington. And it was far more serious than any league-issued fine. When a sports controversy spills beyond the arena and into the halls of government, it's no longer just about the game. That's exactly what happened when Indiana Senator Jim Banks decided enough was enough. Fed up with watching Caitlin Clark take hit after hit without protection, Banks sent a formal letter to the WNBA demanding answers. This wasn't PR-friendly email or a quiet phone call. It was an official inquiry, the kind that gets logged, tracked, and if ignored, escalated. Letter pulled no punches. Banks wanted to know why the league's most valuable player was being repeatedly targeted, why clear fouls were going uncalled, and why no disciplinary action had been taken. More importantly, he framed it not as a matter of sportsmanship, but of rights, suggesting that Clark's treatment might violate the protections every athlete is entitled to under the law. That framing changed everything. Once the term civil rights entered the conversation, the issue went from being a sports debate to a potential legal matter. Civil rights law isn't confined to courtrooms and protests. It extends into the workplace. And for professional athletes, the court is their workplace. If it could be shown that Clark was being treated differently based on race, gender, or other protected characteristics, the league could face serious consequences. The Wall Street Journal's coverage amplified this shift, describing the situation as a warning shot to the WNBA. They weren't just reporting on fouls. They were outlining a case. The combination of high-profile media coverage and a sitting U.S. senator's involvement was enough to make even casual fans realize this was bigger than basketball. Then came the ripple effect in the political sphere. Stephen A. Smith suggested on national television that former President Donald Trump could seize on the issue, turning it into a rallying cry for his base. Whether or not one agrees with his politics, Trump's ability to dominate headlines is undeniable. If he were to champion Clark's cause, the WNBA would find itself in a media firestorm unlike anything it's seen before. That's the danger and the opportunity of political involvement. On one hand, it forces the league to address the issue because ignoring a federal inquiry isn't an option. On the other, it risks turning Clark's safety and career into a political football where the actual problem gets overshadowed by partisan battles. The WNBA's leadership now faces scrutiny not just from fans and media, but from lawmakers who have the power to compel testimony, demand records, and even recommend legal action. The league can no longer hide behind the idea that this is an internal matter. Once Washington gets involved, the timeline and the terms are no longer theirs to control. And this is just the first wave of pressure, because when federal attention lands on sports, it rarely stops at one letter. More questions were coming, and they would reach into the WNBA's most sensitive territory, money. If you strip away the politics, the legal debates, and the social media noise, one undeniable truth remains. Caitlin Clark is the single most valuable asset the WNBA has right now. Her arrival in the league has triggered an economic ripple, the effect that most franchises could only dream of. Ticket sales for Indiana Fever games skyrocketed, forcing moves to larger arenas just to meet demand. Merchandise sales featuring her name and numbers surged by over 600%. Television ratings for games she plays in dwarf those without her. Even the league's League Pass subscriptions and app engagement have climbed to unprecedented levels. This is the type of growth leagues spend decades chasing. Clark's brand is magnetic. She draws in casual fans who've never watched a WNBA game before. She converts them into ticket buyers, and she keeps them talking about the sport long after the final buzzer. For sponsors, she's a dream. Marketable, relatable, and undeniably talented. For the league, she's proof that one player really can change the trajectory of an entire sport. And yet, despite her value, the WNBA's handling of her safety sends the opposite message. The league's reluctance to discipline those who have targeted her doesn't just put her at physical risk. It undermines the very financial boom she created. Every time she takes a dangerous, unnecessary hit, there's a chance she leaves the game early or suffers an injury that sidelines her for weeks. That's not just bad for the Fever. It's bad for the league's bottom line. Fans don't spend hundreds of dollars on tickets, travel, and merch to watch a star player get knocked out of a game in the first quarter. They don't subscribe to streaming packages to watch her sit on the bench with an ice pack. The WNBA is in effect gambling with its most bankable star, hoping she can endure constant physical abuse without breaking down. The math doesn't make sense. Protecting Clark isn't about giving her special treatment. It's about preserving the league's investment. Other professional leagues understand this. The NBA protects its marquee players not because they're immune to criticism, but because they are the product. If LeBron James or Steph Curry were consistently targeted with off-ball hits, you can guarantee there would be immediate suspensions and fines. The WNBA's failure to apply the same standard to Clark creates the perception that they either don't understand her value or simply don't care. Sponsors and partners are watching closely. Brands tie their image to athletes who embody excellence and inspire audiences. If Clark's narrative shifts from transformative star to perpetual victim of league inaction, it could chill sponsor enthusiasm and slow momentum in a league still fighting for mainstream recognition. That's a dangerous position to be in. And it's not just about economics in the present. The way the WNBA treats Clark will send a signal to future stars. Protect your best players, and you attract more talent. Fail to do so, and you risk losing them not to injury, but to leagues and opportunities where they're valued and safeguarded. The money is on the table. The question is whether the WNBA will protect the player bringing it in or keep letting short-sighted decisions jeopardize its own future. If there was ever doubt that Caitlin Clark's treatment was coordinated, player admissions have all but erased it. What was once speculation among fans is now supported by first-hand accounts from athletes themselves, some of whom have shared these details publicly. The revelations are both telling and troubling. painting a picture of a league where physical play against Clark is not just tolerated, but openly discussed as a tactic. Sophie Cunningham, now Clark's teammate with the Indiana Fever, provided one of the most eye-opening perspectives. She admitted that during her time with the Phoenix Mercury, locker room conversations often turned to how aggressively they should play against Clark. These weren't casual side comments. There were strategic discussions about setting a physical tone early, sending a message, and making Clark earn every inch of space on the floor. Rebecca Lobo, ESPN analyst and former WNBA star, didn't mince words either. She pointed out that every single one of the plays in question, the blind sides, the shvees, the hits away from the ball, will be called fouls under normal circumstances. The implication was clear. This wasn't just tough defense. It was selective enforcement. And Clark was on the wrong side of it. Then there's the player ballot for All-Star voting. Despite Clark receiving over 1 million fan votes in ranking as one of the most popular athletes in the sport, she landed ninth among guards in the player-only voting. Longtime analyst Dick Vatitali called it what it looked like jealousy. His comments struck a nerve because they cut to the heart of the problem. Resentment from peers over Clark's rapid rise, marketability, and outsized influence on the league's growth. These dynamics create an environment where on-court targeting can flourish. When teams collectively recognize that officials won't consistently protect a player, the incentive to push physical boundaries grows. And when that mindset starts in the locker room, it spreads quickly. The hits stop looking like isolated incidents and start looking like part of a coordinated culture. What makes this even more damaging is that the admissions aren't coming from anonymous whisperers. They're on record. They've been published in reputable outlets like the Wall Street Journal. This means there's no easy way for the league to dismiss the narrative as rumor or exaggeration. It's documented. And in some cases, it's coming straight from Clark's current teammates. For the average fan, this changes the tone of the debate. It's no longer a question of whether Clark can handle physical play. She's proven she can. It's about whether she's being subjected to a double standard that other stars don't face. The knowledge that her opponents may be entering games with premeditated plans to rough her up takes the conversation beyond sportsmanship and into territory that feels uncomfortably close to workplace harassment. And when player testimony aligns with visual evidence and public perception, the league's room for denial shrinks. The question becomes not whether targeting is happening, but why the WNBA is allowing it to continue unchecked. This is a part of the conversation that the league, many players, and even some media outlets seem unwilling to touch. But it's also the angle that could push the situation from sports debate into the realm of federal investigation. Caitlin Clark isn't just a star player. She's a white straight woman in a league that is predominantly black and openly LGBTQ. On paper, that shouldn't matter. On the court, it increasingly feels like it does. Former WNBA player Candace Wiggins has already spoken publicly about being bullied out of the league for being straight. Her story was dismissed by some at the time, but in hindsight, it feels eerily relevant. Wiggins described a culture where differences in identity can make you a target socially and physically. Now we have Clark, a player whose popularity and marketability have skyrocketed, making her the face of the league almost overnight. That kind of attention doesn't just draw admiration, it breeds resentment. It's not just about jealousy over endorsements or airtime. The hostility toward Clark appears to have an undercurrent of cultural and identity-based tension. While no player has outright admitted that race or sexuality is a motivating factor, the optics are hard to ignore. She's a straight white player whose presence has brought unprecedented ticket sales, TV ratings, and sponsorship dollars. And instead of being embraced by all corners of the league, she's been met with a disproportionate level of physical targeting. From a legal standpoint, that's where the civil rights discussion begins. Workplace harassment laws don't just apply to office jobs. For professional athletes, the court is the workplace and the league is the employer. If a pattern of harassment is based even in part on protected characteristics like race, sex, or sexual orientation, it becomes a civil rights issue. Combine that with the fact that Clark's treatment is happening on national broadcasts with clear video evidence and public admissions from other players about targeting her, and you have the makings of a case that the Department of Justice might take seriously. This isn't just theory. The The Wall Street Journal's framing of the issue as a potential civil rights violation was a deliberate choice. They're not in the business of making unfounded legal claims when one of the nation's most respected financial publications says the WNBA may be stepping into dangerous legal territory. It sends a signal that the risk is real. And the problem for the WNBA is that civil rights cases don't just look at intent, they look at impact. Even if the league tries to argue that Clark's treatment isn't about race or sexuality, the effect on her safety, career, and work environment can still be ground for action. If this angle gains traction, it won't just be sports reporters asking questions. It'll be federal investigators. And when that happens, the WNBA won't just be defending its officiating. It will be defending its culture, its hiring practices, and its commitment to protecting every player, no matter who they are. Beyond the legal questions and political pressure lies a deeper, uglier truth. The WNBA has developed a culture where bitterness toward Caitlin Clark isn't just tolerated, it's encouraged. What should be healthy competition has morphed into something far more personal. For some players, taking a shot at Clark has become a badge of honor, a way to score points not on the scoreboard, but in the locker room hierarchy. You can see it in the little things. The cryptic tweets from players after games clearly aim at Clark without mentioning her name. The likes on social media posts that mock her or downplay her accomplishments. The passive-aggressive post-game interviews where opponents smirk about sending a message or making her adjust to the league's style of play. These behaviors don't happen in isolation. They're signals both to fans and to each other that Clark is fair game. What's disturbing is how public it's all become. In most professional leagues, targeted animosity toward a star player is kept behind closed doors, at least to maintain the appearance of sportsmanship. In the WNBA, it's often flaunted. Players have openly admitted to game planning extra physicality against her. Others joke about the hits she's taken, framing them as part of her initiation. This isn't just trash talk. It's a mindset, and that mindset has consequences. When physical targeting becomes culturally accepted within a league, referees can start to internalize it, too. They begin to see hard fouls against that player as less egregious, more normal, and they let more of them slide. That's how you end up with situations where Clark takes a shoulder to the ribs away from ball, crumples the floor, and the whistle stays silent. It's not that officials don't see it. It's that they've been conditioned to treat it differently. The fans who came to the WNBA because of Clark are noticing. They didn't sign up to watch her treated like a crash test dummy. They came for her shooting, her court vision, her ability to energize a crowd. Instead, they're being treated to a sideshow of grudges and grudging respect. When newcomers see a league's brightest star repeatedly targeted without consequence, it raises questions about the professionalism and integrity of the sport. For the WNBA, this cultural problem is as dangerous as the legal one. You can't market yourself as a league of empowerment and growth while simultaneously allowing your most visible player to be the constant target of unsportsmanlike conduct. Every unchecked hit, every snide comment, every ignored foul tells fans and future stars the same thing. If the league decides you're not one of us, you're on your own. That's why fixing this isn't just about handing out fines or suspensions. It's about changing the culture. Until the WNBA addresses the bitterness that fuels this behavior, the targeting will continue, and the league's credibility will erode with every game. The problem is culture shifts are slow, and federal investigations move a lot faster. At this point, the WNBA's Caitlin Clark problem is no longer confined to the court. It's entered a territory every professional sports league dreads, a collision of legal jeopardy, public relations disaster, and financial risk. Began as a conversation about officiating has snowballed into something with the potential to reshape the league's reputation for years to come. From a legal standpoint, the evidence is piling up in plain sight. Hours of game footage clearly show repeated off-ball hits, blindsides, and shvees with little to no disciplinary action. Add to that the public statements from players admitting they discussed targeting Clark, and you have more than just hearsay, you have a documented pattern. In a civil rights or workplace harassment case, that kind of proof is gold for investigators. The fact that this pattern involves the league's highest profile player only heightens the stakes. The discovery process alone could be devastating. If this ever reaches a courtroom, lawyers will have the power to subpoena emails, text messages, and internal communications from team staff, referees, and league executives. Imagine what might come to light if there are messages discussing whether or not to penalize players for hitting Clark, or debates about the optics of suspending a popular veteran for fouling the league's new star. Those private conversations, once public, could do irreparable damage to the WNBA's image. On the PR front, the league is already losing control of the narrative. National outlets like the Wall Street Journal have framed the issue as a civil rights matter, while ESPN commentators and political figures have kept the story alive in daily news cycles. Social media is flooded with highlight reels, not of Clark's plays, but of the hits she's taken for a league that has been working tirelessly to grow its fan base. This is the exact opposite of the image they want circulating. Sponsors are another critical piece of the puzzle. Brands invest in sports partnerships to associate themselves with excellence, excitement, and inspiration. They don't want to be tied to a league facing accusations of discrimination or negligence toward its biggest star. Even if sponsors don't pull out entirely, they may scale back or redirect their investments, especially if the controversy deepens. And then there's a fan base. New fans drawn in by Clark's game are already voicing their frustration. If they feel the league is failing to protect the player they came to watch, some will simply stop buying tickets, jerseys, or streaming packages. That kind of attrition hurts, especially for a league still fighting for mainstream traction. In the end, the WNBA is staring down two equally unappealing paths. Act decisively now and risk angering players who have benefited from the status quo, or continue doing nothing and let the legal system, the media, and public opinion dictate the outcome. One option might hurt feelings. The other could sink the league's credibility and possibly its financial future for good. The WNBA stands at a defining moment. What began as a series of uncalled fouls against Caitlin Clark has spiraled into a national controversy attracting politicians, federal investigators, and relentless media attention. The league can no longer hide behind silence or hope the storm will pass. Every ignored hit, every missed call, every dismissive comment has built a case, not just in the court of public opinion, but potentially in a court of law. Protecting Clark isn't about giving her special treatment. It's about safeguarding the league's integrity, its players, and its future. If leadership continues to turn a blind eye, they risk alienating fans, sponsors, and future stars while inviting deeper legal scrutiny. The next move will determine whether the WNBA emerges stronger and more respected, or whether it becomes a cautionary tale of a league that failed to protect its own when it mattered post.